Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Roundtable for our 18th podcast with Gulf Coast Poker. We got a really good guest coming up in our interview, but right now, my partner in crime, Wild Bill Phillips, and poker writer and GCP operative Ben Saxon and I are going to talk a little bit about poker and some of the current events going on. Guys, you want to take it away?
Yeah, so I guess we should start first, talk about the Beau Rivage heater that Gene and I were at. I think Ben was in Arizona, if I recall correctly, during that time. The heater was great. We watched a lot of big guarantees be crushed. So I think they had $1 million guarantee on the opening event, and they beat that by 500,000, half a million. I think on their main event they also had $1 million guarantee, and it was maybe another 500,000 over. They had another $1 million in guarantees during the week, and they either doubled or tripled all those. So there was a huge turnout. Adam Nash kicked butt just like he did cancer, and just like he does in those bare knuckled fights. Like, he was very aggressive with those guarantees, and the people showed up, and that was pretty impressive tournament. Didn't you think, Gene?
Yes. What you and I had spoke about it. I was a little nervous with those guarantees, but I can always get all my nerves calmed whenever I'm around Paul Dutch and get a read on what he's thinking. And I never saw Paul sweat one time, which gave me confidence that we were going to get there on all the guarantees. And sure enough, we did. It was a great turnout and, a great property, the Beau Rivage. You got the new poker room, and they had the final table in the new poker room, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That's correct. So we were covering the main event final table in the new poker room, and we got to see a lot of good players. Some players from Houston were there. I think there was like three of them that went deep, and one of the ones in the chop was Will Leffingwell, who recently won in the last year or so a PLO bracelet for the WSOP. John Dolan, a November Niner from Florida, had he's had a ton of big scores in his career, but when they chopped it, I think 4 ways, he got one of the bigger ones. I think they all got over 140K, if I'm recalling correctly. So that was a real good final table. We had some local interests that, when we're covering it, we're always kind of maybe rooting for a little bit on the side, and none of them made it as deep as maybe we would have liked. But still a great turnout. Event one, the winner got over 220,000. We'll probably hear from that guy very shortly, but that was pretty impressive on a $400 buy-in. They had 6 fights and just knocked it out. So can't wait for the next event at the Beau. People love playing tournament poker there, that is for sure. And Adam Nash does a great product. You guys want to talk about perhaps something else that went on in the poker world? Another guy from the Gulf Coast who had a really good month, and it was at the PokerGo Cup, I believe. His name's Jonathan Little. You remember Jonathan Little, Gene?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I think if I remember right, Jonathan was on our first cover of our Gulf Coast Poker magazine back in the day, and he's from Pensacola, right?
That's correct. And his father, Larry, plays quite a few of our events, and he always shows up and represents. And he's a great guy. It's a great family. Little got involved in some controversy, none of his doing, but Matt Berkey, I believe, came in and kind of criticized. Let me think about it. Was it Berkey that criticized Little, or Negrano that criticized Little? I can't remember which one. I think
It was
Berkey
it was
criticized him
Berkey.
and
Yeah,
Negrano took up for him. Is
yeah, it was
that right?
Berkey. One of the interesting things about this story, I think, is how little has, he's obviously been a very successful poker player in his own right over the years, but where he's shown and separate himself even more maybe is in his coaching. Like he's really has a really strong brand. He's got books and he's largely marketed to, lower stakes folks who are maybe trying to play semi-professionally or maybe turn pro. And so uh the most recent PokerGo Cup is him. Those fields are small. You have the best players in the world, and he won the main event for the last cup, the 25K buy-in for 453K. He also won the third event for 229K. And for those for anybody who watches the PokerGo tour, there's basically it's a small series, 5 or 10K buy-ins, usually capped off with the 25K or 50K final tournament. And it's just like 40, 50, 60, 70 of the best players in the world. So for little to ship that is just yet another testament to to his dedication and his abilities. And Negreanu had kind of been sticking up for a little, and maybe that gets into some side beef between Berkey and Negreanu. But yeah, certainly I'm sure Little feels validated by this win.
Right. It's pretty poor timing for Berkey to be critical of his poker coaching. And then he goes and just, like you said, validates it with those two big wins against the best players in the world. It's hard to argue with him now. And, what's also weird is you speak about Little's character. We know him a little bit from a long time ago from that magazine that you mentioned, Gene, the short-lived Gulf Coast Poker magazine. I know he's involved. I'm not sure if the charity's adding up for autism, but I know he has done stuff like that in the past. His family is all class act. Larry Little's a great guy. And Jonathan, and speaking of that magazine and talk about how like he's just kind of a great dude. We had at that point, it was hard to get brick and mortars to advertise with us, and we were a new magazine, and it was really important to sell that back cover to get the distribution out on the magazine. And we had one lined up, a casino, many different staffs ago. I'm not going to name the casino, but people that were involved in that are no longer there. But they were going to buy it. The last minute, we get a phone call from like their corporate office. The advertisers there, people in charge of the advertising budget, were like, nope, it's not going to happen. So basically, we had done everything for the magazine, but couldn't get it distributed. And I told Jonathan that I wasn't going to go to print. And he said, well, how much is that back cover? And whatever the figure was, he said, all right, I'll buy the advertising for my coaching site. I think it was even back then. And, you could say, well, he wanted to do that because he was going to be featured in the magazine. But I think it was a lot more than that. I think he was just trying to help us out. He recognized what we'd been doing as a website, how we're trying to grow the game and promote poker. And that was something that he could do. So class act all around. And to get criticism like that, it's almost like, why are you going after the nice kid? Like, and he kind of is the nice kid in poker. So I'm really happy for him that he's had that success. And it's weird that he would be in the epicenter of yet another poker beef. But, as he's done it with everything else, I think he handled himself with class in that. I don't see anybody criticizing anything that he's done since that happened.
Good deal, man. Good deal. You want to talk about the backpack of money?
All right. Well, why don't you tell us what went down with the backpack?
I don't know. Ben, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, it's a good thing there's three of us, right? So
Yeah.
one of us can always pick up the slack. Fortunately, Google is my friend, and what we're referencing is Anthony Zinno, who is by most accounts, like he's a very respected player. I mean, really by all accounts. I mean, it's been hard to people haven't really said a bad word about him over the years. He's very accomplished. He's won 4 bracelets. So a couple weeks ago, he found a
Was it
backpack.
at the Win? Was it at the Win? Was it in December, or
Yeah, I
was it
think
after that?
so. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, he found a backpack and picked up the bag. And another player filed a report and alleged that it had $20,000 of cash inside. So I'm just going to go ahead and read Anthony's tweet. There's
Okay.
legal
I'm
matter.
familiar with it. I was just going to let, so I can, if you're not full in the details, I can fill them in a little bit, but go ahead and read the
Sure.
tweet
Well,
first.
why don't I start? I'll start with his account. He obviously can't say everything, I think, because there's some legal matters pending. But he mentioned this is what he says. He said we'd all made it in the money, which at the end of the day, the barroom was shut down for the night. I stood up to leave and noticed the lost bag. My first instinct, it was a late night, was that I would assume responsibility and get it to the owner myself, figuring that they went home. Um, my goal was to find ID or verify ownership. Unsuccessful. I brought the bag back to Encore, uh, slept, and then played day two. He says, I absolutely deny what is being alleged. And what's being alleged is that yeah, I mean he saw an empty backpack, snagged it, eventually saw that there was 20K and wanted to keep it or whatever.
So supposedly he took 19 and left 1K. Is what's being said, that the backpack was returned with 1,000 or roughly $1,000 in it, yet the guy that lost it said that he had 20,000 in it. So that's the accusation, is that Zeno, or as other people pointed out, perhaps maybe whoever Zeno gave it to took the money, but Zeno right now is being accused of lifting the 19K.
So what can we
Yeah.
what can we say about this beyond don't leave a backpack unattended in a card room?
Right.
Really.
Well, I also think it's interesting. What would you do if you were, let's give Zeno the benefit of the doubt here. You find the backpack. What do you do? What's your procedure? And this is probably an educational experience. You can play all the different possibilities. But let's say you find it and you're well intentioned. What would you do?
Well, I
Either
think
one of
one
you.
reason why people are
Well,
skeptical of the story is because the sort of intuitive move would be to find the nearest security guard and
exactly.
say, "Hey, I found there's a bag unattended. Maybe do you wanna check it out and maybe hang on to it and try to find the owner rather than sort of take security into your own hands."
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking also. But then you also gotta take a look. Zeno's a very accomplished player. You think 19K would be worth him basically getting his reputation ruined? I don't know.
So I think this is like, now, if I were ever to be in this situation, let's say he did it. He thought it was a small community. I don't know which tournament he was in, but maybe he thought he would be able to find the info quickly and get them to 20K. And he thought that was safer rather than giving it to a random casino security guard or to the casino itself. And I never would have thought, let's assume he's innocent, right? And let's say he gave the money in and somebody lifted the 19K and then they just left 1K in it because they, had a crime of opportunity. I never would have thought that could happen, right? If I found a big sum of money, I'd just turn it in the casino. But possibly you could turn it in the casino and somebody could be, a bad actor and take that money, and then now you're kind of on the hook for it. Now, circumstantially, right, that guy shouldn't be trying to steal 19K, you wouldn't think, based on all the success he's had. But it doesn't look good for him either, right? Like, it's hard to believe that the security guard or the casino or somebody in between took the money and not him. And then you also got to wonder, is the initial guy just making up a story and saying he had 19,000 more in it than he really did, or he forgot. Some poker players, like, you remember that picture of Phil Ivey with the money underneath his chair, right? Like, some of these guys might have a little bit of a role and forget it. I don't know.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's also sort of a window into the very weird way that gamblers deal with money, have an attachment to money. There's an obsession with money on the one hand, but then there's this like absurd nonchalance sometimes. The Ivy image is really iconic of just bricks of cash like strewn about the floor out on his seat, or people
Right.
walking around with backpacks full of cash, and then they just like decide to just leave it and wander off.
So
So
we had
for
it. Go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to say, for the record, Zeno's got almost well 11,600,000 in winnings. Oof.
Wow. Yeah, so 19K shouldn't do much for him. But you never know. Run bad is bad for everybody. Variance can eat you up quick. I don't know how fast you can burn through 10K buy-ins or how much he's back. But I do want to say, you're talking about the backpacks and that kind of casual disregard for money. There's a player who's probably listening to this podcast who at PokerGO left his backpack in a restaurant with not an insignificant amount of money and totally forgot about it. Fortunately for him, a dealer at Harrah's happened to be in the restaurant, saw the backpack, brought it back for him, and he got everything back from it. But, it's not crazy that this has happened. No other probably enterprise did people are so cavalier with money, right?
Right. Yeah. Crazy.
So we had one more notable story. Bill, do you want to talk a little bit about the Phil Hellmuth, Mike Haxton? We'll call it a beef.
Yeah, I have a lot of opinions on this, and I don't want to get in trouble because it seems like some of the ones I disagree with the majority on quite a bit. I think I was reading some of these tweets. It seems like 90% are on one side and then 10% on the other. And I kind of agree with the 10%, which is weird because these are people I don't normally agree with. So I guess that means my opinion's honest. But Phil Hellmuth tweeted that he basically called out Ike Haxton for wearing a mask. And then a lot of other people got involved, including Daniel Negreanu and Justin Bonomo, and everybody kind of had an opinion on it. And basically was saying that it gives a big advantage to Ike. And he sort of pointed to Ike's recent success as evidence that the mask was giving him a huge advantage. But in the accusation thrown at Ike, he kind of threw it to mask wearers in general. And this, to me, I don't want to get too much in the nuance before I let you guys talk, but to me, this is the weird thing is nobody's wearing masks right now. So when Phil Hellmuth backtracked a little bit, so well, it's not just Ike, it's about everybody. That's weird to me because there's so few people out there actually wearing a mask. Is this really a problem? Because when we go to poker tournaments, that I really don't see people wearing masks. And sometimes the ones I do see, they also have a cough. So they're probably trying to be responsible and not share as much of the virus as they would without one. But that rubbed me a little weird that it seems almost like they're trying to fix a problem that's not really there. So in essence, they're just calling out Ike. Did you guys see it that way or you see it a different way?
Well, so I guess the reason they're saying he's an advantage because he covers his jugglers and stuff like that.
Yeah, I guess Phil, White Magic and all that gets a lot of live reads on Ike, maybe around his mouth, or maybe it's easier to have a poker face when you got a mask on or whatever. I've seen some people say the most comfortable they felt at a table is when they're wearing a mask. Maybe it also gives you that extra layer of protection. Maybe it diminishes other tells that you might have. I'm not sure. But he drew a concrete line between Ike's success and the mask, which to me is I don't necessarily agree with that. He's certainly in an upswing, but I'm not sure the mask is the result of the upswing. I hate to agree with Justin Bonomo of all people, but Bonomo pointed out that Ike's been a consistent winner forever. And then Negreanu countered, well, this is the most that he's won in this amount of period. But we all know poker and variance. So if he's a great player, he at some point is going to get really hot. You know, Bonomo was really hot 4 or 5 years ago and won everything he played. So this just kind of happens.
Yeah.
But did you guys see the mask? That you have different opinions on that? I mean, I feel like I was in the minority when I read people weigh in on the mask issue. It seems a lot of like anger towards mask wearers.
So I would just to continue on your point about, well, maybe this isn't as big of an issue as it appears, because you walk into a poker room and there aren't a lot of people wearing masks, but I feel like that's a very partial way of looking at things. So I think one thing that Ike said, just to kind of get his point in there, he tweeted, many people have medical reasons that they need to be careful to avoid exposure to COVID and other respiratory infections. Banning masks would exclude them from live poker. So I think it's important to think about not only the people who are maskless in a card room, but the people who would really like to play poker, who would like to play live poker, but health conditions prevent them from doing so. So I think that, I think this issue gets to the question of like how we can create safe spaces in poker. And, Phil, assuming that Ike is using his mask as a tactic instead of for health reasons, it just feels like a bad faith argument that is further preventing people with health conditions from feeling safe and going in card rooms. So I am very much with Ike on this. I think that this also gets to the question of like what are Phil's priorities? What are our collective priorities? Do we care about profits, about gaining an edge by wearing masks so people can't read us, or do we care about people and people being able to be healthy and feel safe in card rooms and in other places? So I agree that this is a very highly charged, it's a politicized issue, and I feel like this is one reason why there's been kind of a firestorm of tweets and controversy and whatnot, because it moves very easily into this larger arena of what mask wearing symbolizes. And Ike is not entirely guiltless in this vein. He's very liberal, and he took some pleasure in his victory photos, wearing the mask in his victory photos, and saying he kind of enjoys triggering conservatives by them seeing him. So there's a lot bound up in here, but I think for me it really gets back to the priority of putting people's health first.
Right. And I agree 100% with that. And I think a larger issue too is just mask in general. I understand why there's such anger because of what we've been through over the last few years. But generally, if you see like a person wearing a mask now, there's so few people wearing it that is probably a health issue. Like the amount of people, let's say, I'm just talking in general, right? If somebody's wearing a mask out and about, they're probably not like just terrified of COVID at this point. They probably have some sort of health condition that they're worried about it and they're more at risk. And when we like go after those people, we're kind of, it's none of their business what their health issues are, right? They probably don't want to be wearing a mask. Like to me, when I played poker with a mask, that was one of the most, sorry, my dog wants to bark at another dog. That was one of the most uncomfortable experiences I could have. Like it was very difficult for me to like breathe and focus, and I really hated it. And at the time, I wore it, but the people in life now, the few people out there with masks are probably doing it not because they're, scared, but because they may have a health issue. And I got to assume with Ike's resilience and wearing this mask more than anybody else in poker, there's an underlying health issue. Now, if somebody comes out and shows me pictures of Ike going out to restaurants and doing all these things and he's not wearing a mask and he's only wearing a mask at a poker table, okay, different issue. but as yet, I don't believe any of that has happened, right? Have y'all seen anything like that other than the vaping charge?
Yeah, and I guess
Which
that's another important point to bring up is Negreanu kind of chimed in as a quasi joke, talking about how, on the one hand, Ike is wearing a mask, and on the other hand, he was seen maskless smoking or vaping or whatever. Were you going to say something, Gene?
no, I'm sorry. I wasn't, but I didn't know that Ike smoked. I mean, that's kind of a weird situation. Do we know what his medical issues are? Did he ever disclose that of why?
So he did not, and he hasn't. And, I don't think I'm kind of the viewpoint, like if he's wearing the mask, you just assume there's a medical condition. It's not really our business to ask. But I think Justin Botomo and maybe some other people came out and said he's talked about long COVID. And maybe I'm assuming maybe he had COVID and then he had long COVID. Of course, some people believe there is no such thing as long COVID. And some people believe that there is. And that seems to be a political issue when, maybe we should just listen to the doctors that talk about it. Well, although everybody's got their own favorite set of doctors when it comes to COVID, right? But I think it's a long COVID issue. And but there's nothing, he's never come out and definitively said that. I know that he's been very active in helping other people that have said that they've suffered from long COVID and they've gotten them PPE or get recommended some things for them to take. So he has a pretty big knowledge base on that. And I would guess that's probably what it is. And we know some people who have certainly had some issues dealing with COVID, past actually having it. And, a lot of people say, well, it's the vaccine that caused long COVID, or there is no long COVID. But we know people that have dealt with those issues without ever taking the vaccine. And they're certainly not the kind of people that just kind of make this up in their head or some sort of anxiety versus actually an affliction. And the stuff I've read has suggested that it is real and it's very bad. And I know some people that have had really terrible life experiences since contracting COVID and dealing with that. So I don't want to wait. I don't want to get too political because, and I'm not trying to be political. It just seems this issue just, it's like a line in the sand. And I don't necessarily agree 100% with either side.
All right.
You guys.
Well,
Yeah, I appreciate that, Bill. The last thing I'll say is, this, I think this is a reminder for all of us to kind of challenge ourselves and think about to what extent we're sort of putting forward cynical interpretations of other people and their actions or charitable interpretations. And I feel like Phil's cynical interpretation that Ike wearing the mask as a tactic. I mean, I think it says so, it's more about Phil Hellmuth than about Ike. We can never know what Ike's motivations are, and in the end, I don't think it matters. I think it's more of just like, how can we, how can we put forward charitable interpretations rather than just like this toxic, like, well, he must be playing to get an edge. Yes, there are people in poker who are trying to game every system and get every edge. But I think looking at the bigger context and looking at Ike's track record, and looking at this bigger picture of long COVID and possible health conditions, yeah, I just and also looking at Phil Hellmuth, I think if someone who had a little bit more credibility was making this charge, then that might change my mind as well. But Phil Hellmuth is, of course, another story. We're going to talk to Matt Higgins. Is there anything you want to say about Matt before we jump into the interview, Bill?
Great guy. we're always grateful for Matt to kind of support us and to wear GCP gear often. Very happy for his recent success. He's had a couple of big scores back to back, and he's a similar Jonathan Little. Very glad to see it happen.
So without further ado, we'll take a little break and come back with our conversation with Matt Higgins.
Before we launch into our next guest, we will let Wild Bill plug the upcoming GCP events. Bill, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, so we got a lot on the calendar coming up soon. One event at National Harbor, which is outside of Washington, D.C., where we're going to be doing the promotion and marketing similar to what we did at the Beau Rivage. And that's a 2-week event highlighted by a $3,000 buy-in main event. And I think maybe 3 million in guarantees there. It's always a lot of fun. Then we'll be at Million Philly again in March. And after that, we're going to be back in Coshada in April. And everybody that missed our first stop in Coshada, we encourage you guys to come and check it out. It's going to be very similar to what we're doing in the Million Philly. And we think we can build it up to be a very similar and prolific event, so to speak. So a lot of work ahead of us, but we're looking forward to it.
Good deal. We're going to go ahead and introduce our next guest, Matt Higgins. Matt, is it 5 rings now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Who is on a super heater. Those last 2 tournaments were 6-digit scores. Matt, we're going to give you the same first question that we give all our guests. How did you wind up in this crazy subculture of poker that we all have ourselves wind up in? Just tell us how you got started.
Well, I grew up in Gulfport, Mississippi, and when I lived there, I didn't really know anything about poker. And I lived there until Katrina hit in 2005, and then I moved to Tennessee. At the time, all I really knew how to play was blackjack, baccarat, and like table games. I'd never really played poker at all, but there was no real gambling close to here besides Cherokee. And I think at that time, they were just like all digital games. Like it was before Cherokee had live dealers at all. So I went back. I sold real estate when I lived in Mississippi. Moved up here after Katrina. I got my license, but it was kind of hard for me to get in the market. The market was kind of soft at that time anyway. I didn't really want to try to, the old pity sell. I'm a Hurricane Katrina refugee. I moved up here, So I went back to what I was really good at. I was really good at bartending. I bartended for, most of my adult life. Started doing that. And then when we were getting off work, some guys would have, they go play poker at their house or whatever. And I started learning, like playing house, 20-cent, 50-cent games. And then there were some tournaments around here that they were running, like the VFW and the Knights of Columbus and stuff. And I finally got a couple nights off from work and went down there and checked out the tournaments. And I found out that I liked tournaments probably a little bit better than I did cash, just because there's so much more money to be won if you won tournament. You're 50, 100x in your money if you win a tournament, as opposed to, you're kind of capped playing cash unless you're playing larger cash games. So I want to say I probably started really playing tournaments like 2013, 2014, when I just kind of started figuring them out. And then probably about 2016 is when I really started. I met Blake Whittington. I never heard of him, but we had actually finally met. I'd run a cash game at the time, and he came to my cash game, and we started hanging out, became pretty good friends, and then started picking his brain about tournaments and, just run hand histories by him. And he helped me get a lot better. And, over the course of the next couple of years, tournaments seemed to be where it was at for me as opposed to cash.
So that's probably first time we probably ran into you might have been at Pearl River. Maybe it was in New Orleans at a circuit event. I'm not sure. But you were one of the original Pearl River players, right? You came in very early, one of the first few stops they had.
I'm pretty sure I won the very first re-entry there ever. I want to say it was Card Player was putting it on at the time. It wasn't very large. But I think I won the very first re-entry there ever. And then I don't think I went back to Pearl River for like 2 or 3 years. We went back like a little bit, but nothing like I am doing now. We don't, not every stop and every series, being there for the whole stop.
Yeah, I think maybe when I first played there was Ante Up, but it might have been Card Player to start.
That's what it was. It was Ante Up.
Okay. Yeah. Quite a difference, right? Like we were in a tiny little room.
Huge difference. It was in this where the sports book is at now. So, I mean, I want to say there was maybe top 8 tables in there, maybe 10 tops.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you too. You mentioned you lived in Chattanooga or around there. I know you're in Rossville.
I live around Chattanooga. Yeah, I live right. When I moved to Chattanooga after Katrina, but about 2 years of living up here, I found a house I liked, and I've been here ever since.
So was that going to be temporary? You were just evacuated, and then you just kind of stayed on, or you were like, time for a change? Or
well, I originally planned to move back to Mississippi. I was bartending at the Beau at the time, and then right there before Katrina, I got a job bartending at the Hard Rock for Hard Rock Live, and we were setting everything up for like the casino being open. The casino wasn't open yet, and the casino just basically fell in the ocean, when Katrina hit. So, but I'd planned on moving back. My oldest son's mother, me and her, I guess we'd been separated for like 2 or 3 months, and I went ahead and put a deposit down on my new place to move back to Mississippi. Got my old job back from my old real estate firm. Got a job back at the Beau Rivage. I literally had all my ducks in order. Was moving back, and she called me. She's like, "Hey, we need to talk." And I was like, "Oh, is it that talk?" And she was like, "Yeah, it's that talk." So, I wouldn't change my, I love my boys, so I think that's what kept me in Chattanooga. Granted, I miss the coast, but again, I wouldn't change anything.
How old
that's
is
a good reason to stay for sure.
My oldest son is 14.
Hey, me and Bill got 14-year-olds too.
And then my youngest son is 12. His name's Maddox.
Oh, wow. Good stuff.
So am I right? You knew Heather and George way back then, or Dusty is
I missed Dusty and Heather. I want to say I've known them, I guess, as soon as I started playing cash games. Really, I don't really remember whose game they were dealing. They were dealing somebody's game, and then they ran a little game at their house every now and then. And that's I want to say maybe there was this game in Cleveland they were dealing, and I met them, and then good people.
So let me ask you this: you had these 2 big scores, 2 of the biggest scores that you've had in your career within like 20, 25 days of each other. What do you do with the rings and the trophies?
I got I'm starting to run out of room on my dresser. Carl Masters has sent me this when I won I want to say it was my 3rd ring. He made me this big blow up portrait of the picture. It's in one of my spare bedrooms. I'm thinking I'm gonna have to move it all in there, get me some shelves or something put in there, because my old lady's getting tired of looking at all the stuff in the bedroom. My picture on faces, rings and trophies and stuff, but it's all fun.
Sometimes people, when they start acquiring 5, 10, 20, how many rings you're going to end up with, they give them to somebody. You ever thought about doing that? Are you going to keep them?
Yeah, I'm probably going to give them to my boys. I just, as of right now, I got a little, she got me this trophy thing where they, I guess she ordered them offline. It was like a ring holder, like a trophy thing. They're just in these little individual trophy sets right now.
So those are 2 of your biggest scores. I was looking at your Hendon Mob earlier. Speak a little bit about, I'm guessing this is one of the high points in your poker career, and maybe speak a little bit, contrast it with some low points over the years when you've been playing poker.
Well, I said, we know everybody knows that if you play a long time and you play lots of tournaments, downswings happen. I've been pretty fortunate not to go through any like massive downswings. Every 6 months or a year, I've had a pretty significant score ever since I've really started playing tournaments, which is a huge blessing. But I know amazing poker players that have went on 2-year downswings. Eric Salzar is one of my really good friends, and he's been on one of the biggest downswings I've probably ever seen. He hasn't had any real like massive scores. He's just getting in good, like in these massive equity spots, and they're getting there on him and beating him. But he got second in the Tournament of Champions for the World Series of Poker, and I want to say it was 2018 or 2019, and that's probably one of his last real significant scores, and he's just been downswinging. So, like I said, I've been blessed not to experience a downswing like that, but downswings are tough. They're very, very bounding. If you're a poker player and you've been through them, you understand like it's very bad for your mental health. People don't realize that. They say, "Oh man, playing poker must be so cool. Play poker for a living," and I mean, it is. It's great. I tell people all the time, it's a hard way to make easy living, but it's the mental part of it is brutal. I mean, just when you're not saying you're better than everybody else you're playing with, but you're in the top tier of players you're playing with, and you keep losing. It's especially if you're a competitive person.
Yeah. So contrast that. I'm guessing you played amazing, but you also probably ran pretty good in those 2 tournaments as well. Like, how does that feel to be in kind of the zone as a player, and also maybe having luck on your side a little bit?
It's amazing whenever there's of course in some point in time in every tournament, like you feel a swing of momentum. Like especially when you win a tournament, not so much when you lose a tournament, but when you feel like you're going to win, there's almost a point in time whenever it clicks, you're like, I'm probably going to win this tournament. In the Biloxi reentry, I had lost probably 45 or 50% of my stack trying to bluff this guy, blind versus blind. Didn't work. 3 or 4 hands later, this guy opens under the gun. I look down and got 2 jacks. I get 17 big blinds. I hate it because the guy really hadn't played a bunch of hands, but I mean, it just, the math is I have to die there, send it. He calls with 2 queens, we flop a jack, we hold. And then there was probably with like 50 some people left that was in the Biloxi reentry. And I just never looked back, just all my hands were holding. I don't think I got it in bad once really until we were 3-handed with Maurice, and I'm 70-30. I got to call him with just about any ace 3-handed, for 15 bigs. So,
what did he have? He had bigger.
Hit pocket tens.
Pocket tens. Okay.
I got ace 5 and an ace.
So, Dale Roselle, is that the way you say his last name?
Yep.
Roselle. He finished second to you in Tunica. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a pretty good friend of mine.
Him from.
I've known him forever. He lives in Chattanooga. Me and him have been really good friends, even on and off the field. Like, we played a lot of cash together for years, and his game is night and day from where he used to play. He used to be like, just this big blaster. And like you heard Dale was coming to the cash game, like, oh yeah, it's on. We're fixing to, 1 or 2 things was going to happen. He's either going to beat your brains in, or you was going to make a bunch of money. But he moved to Arizona for a little bit, and he moved back, and now he's back, playing tournaments again. Kind of cool. He was in New Jersey playing the Borgata series before this Tunica trip, and I was just like, hey, I'm about to leave to drive to Tunica. You want to go with me? You want me to wait on you to land, and come with me? He's like, I don't think I'm going to go. He's like, I'm exhausted. I want to say he was in Hollywood the week before that. And then actually, this is what he did. He was actually in Borgata, flew from Borgata to play the Hollywood main because their main center, the day ones and day twos didn't overlap. So he went and flew from Borgata to Hollywood, didn't do anything there, and then flew back to Borgata, and then didn't really do much there. You know, he min cashed, I think. And so I was like, hey, you know, I'm probably leaving at like 11 in the morning. Do you want me to wait on you, you know, to go up to Tunica? And he's like, no, I don't think I'm going to go. I was like, well, I just think that, you know, I say I run pretty good in Mississippi, man. I said, you should probably come check it out with me. And eventually I ended up talking him into it. And, you know, the rest is history. We ended up playing, ride together, stay together, get heads up.
That's not the first time that's happened for you, right?
It's actually not. The reentry, I don't remember what year it was. It's been a couple of years by now, but Blake Whittington is, I was talking to him about coming to play the reentry in Cherokee. And he was like, you know, I'm just thinking I'm going to hang out at my sister's house until Monday or Tuesday, and I'll come down Monday or Tuesday. I said, bro, I was just, of course, you know, joking, talking shit. I was like, how are we going to play heads up if you know, you don't come? He's like, and, you know, eventually I ended up talking him into coming. He actually ended up taking an Uber from Charlotte because something was wrong with his car. You know, $120 Uber from Charlotte to Cherokee. And the same thing happened to me and him get heads up. And so I guess if I ever tell you need to come to a stop and I talk you into it, you should probably come.
Absolutely. I was going to wonder why you don't invite me to more tournaments. I think I'd have to take you up on that.
You gotta give me some doubt. And I got to try to talk you into coming.
Okay. All right. I'll do that for sure. Gene, you had a question?
Yeah. So Matt, what do you consider who do you consider the toughest players in the Gulf Coast? You know, obviously you play with the top guys. I've seen you with final table with Moneymaker, Maurice, the whole crowd, Daniel Lowry. Who do you think's some of the toughest out there?
Well, I recently read this interview that Dan Lowry's the second best poker player in Arkansas. But I hate to see Dan Lowry. He is so fierce. He is a monster. Preston, very good. Donovan Dean. There's just so many great poker players from this area. But those three in particular, I'd much rather be on their left than their right.
And then
Well, go ahead.
Right. No, you go.
No, I was just going to follow up because when I was researching you before this conversation, I saw that you were 10th all time on Georgia's money list and you moved up. And of the players that are ahead of you, there's a main event champion, there's a main event runner up, there's Kerry Katz, who's got like 40 million in earnings, which is, you know, crazy. Josh Aria, David Bach. I mean, it's some like pretty impressive names. But you're also now ahead of Hamid Azadi, Stephen Nasrallah, Jerry Monroe. How do you think Georgia, I know you kind of maybe consider yourself more a Tennessee native, but how do you think the Georgia players and from that area rate against everybody else?
Most of the Georgia players I play with, you know, a lot of them aren't really that tough, I would say. Of course, I don't play, you know, Kerry Katz play something but high limit stuff. Weinman doesn't really come out of retirement before the main, he wasn't playing much at all. You know, he'd come play a Cherokee main every now and then, but Weinman wasn't playing a lot. Hamid's very tough to play against. He's very good as well. That's kind of like the turning point in the Tunica main. Me and him had a hand to where, you know, I got it in bad against him and I got there on him. And then pretty much I never got it in really. I don't say get it in bad. You know, rest of the trip was probably 60-40s or, you know, 50-50s. But that was probably the last time I got it in bad was against him. It's kind of weird. The whole story is kind of, you know, people say everything comes for a reason. Sometimes I believe it, sometimes I don't. The night before, we're on the money bubble. Donovan opens off of Infinity, like he always has a million chips anyway. I know he's probably on the money bubble. He's raising probably a 4 and a napkin. So a guy behind him calls. I look down, queen jack of hearts on the button. I got 17 bigs. Send it. Donovan calls. Other guy calls with pocket fives, which is pretty wide. It's pretty ambitious, I should say, on the stone bubble for the money of a main event. But he calls and he holds. And I probably wouldn't even win for it if we didn't have another day to try to shoot another bullet. Another day to bag. So, and then I ended up being on my third bullet on Saturday. I was like, how did we get here? Lose queens to aces for a ton in level 2, and then I lose set over set 5 versus 10s in like a 400 big blind pot, like level 4. Just very frustrating, annoying. I was like, why did I go for the whole time I'm just talking to myself, like, why did you do that last time with queen jack? Should just folded and gotten the money, and then try to bag from there. But I got about 15 bigs. Guy opens the cutoff. I look down at ace jack suited on the button. I send it. He wakes up in the small blind, resends it. So now I know I'm pretty dead. I probably got 3 outs at best. He has ace king. We get there. And then, like I said, I just never looked back after that. Just kept steamrolling,
How was the play at that final table? You had some pretty that was a pretty tough table, I think.
BJ's very good. There was a new guy. I want to say his name was Richard. He was a recreational player. He played probably, and it might have been just because he was nervous about playing, for that kind of money. But he played absolutely perfect ICM poker for his stack size. Dale's very tough. Me and Dale haven't really played much together at all since he's been back playing full time. And pretty much I was just leaning on everybody until I caught a massive punt from this guy early, the guy that came in the day chip leader. He just basically gave me, I want to say 40 or 50 big blinds with just ace jack high.
Wow.
But I guess I'd have something to call with, but it was I just and I probably should have thought it through a little more than I did, but I just kind of in my mind, I just knew I had the best hand, so I just snapped him and we were right and we held. So
what did you have? You had ace king, ace queen?
I have ace 10. The recreational player, Richard, I'm pretty sure his name was Richard. He opens off of 13 big blinds. We're at 100K big. He makes it 2 1/4. Button calls. Ronnie Taylor, I believe is his name, on the button. He calls. I don't remember the guy that had the chip lead coming in today. Marty, I think is his name. He calls from the small blind. I'm pretty sure if I can get past Richard, I'm just going to pick up all this dead money. Look down at ace 10, ace of spades, 10 of clubs. I make it 1.2 million. Folds through to Marty in the small. He calls. So now I'm like, well, I don't know what we're going to do now. I said, I just expected to get it through. If I got past Richard, I just expect to get it through. And it just comes 10, 6, 4, 2 spades. And he just sent it. I want to say there's played maybe right under 3 million in the pot. He sent it for 4 million. And like I said, in the ICM situation spot, I should probably have thought it through. I had him covered probably 1.5 million. I just went ahead and I just snapped him and he flips over ace jack high. He's just drawn dead to a jack.
Wow. I read that hand history now that you're saying it, and I remember thinking, wow. Is that maybe how he acquired all the chips, because he was getting all those through, or do you think it was just maybe the pressure of the final table or something like that?
He made some very massive bets, that you normally can't call. ICM just if you understand ICM, you just shouldn't be bleeding off that many chips to call free unless you have a super premium hand, and then at that point you probably should be sticking him in his face. If you're calling it off, you might as well be the aggressor. He never really, any of his hands, he won a big pot against Dale. I want to say Dale had ace queen, comes out at queen 7-3 or something rainbow, and he checked Dell bet and he sent and Dell called him and he flopped a set threes. He won a pretty big pot there against Dell. And then, but I don't think at any other point in time, any of his hands ever really went to showdown. He was like picking up a bunch of pots because he was like somebody'd raise, at 50, they make like 100, 100 quarter, and he just make like 700,000, just something like impossible to call unless you have like a real hand.
Is that the guy Marty?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's his biggest score. I'm looking at it right now. He doesn't have a whole lot of Hendon Mob.
I know that it said he had 2 rings. I didn't. And I know a lot of people do a lot of research on people like for their day twos, and
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
I don't really ever do research on people on my table, unless we're like deep in like a main like day 45 of a main event. I'll do some research on people just to kind of see if they're capable people or whatnot. But most of the time, I just try to play my game. I don't care who I'm playing against. Like I said, I hate playing against. There's a lot of people. I really play against a lot of people that have played against Dan Lowry. I really think he's one of the greatest to ever play the game. He's a beast.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that in terms of researching people. I used to do it, and I played one year. I went deep in the main, and I was reading my table draw the next day, and it was loaded. There was like I was doing the research, and all these guys had a ton of winnings, and I was like, well, this guy doesn't. So my strategy is to go after that guy. And that guy beat the heck out of me. I didn't win a pot against him. I won all my pots against everybody else. But
well, the thing is this: you have to realize,
I was like, what?
Even a lot of times, these people that don't have any Hendon Mob scores, these guys can be nosebleed cash game players that just the pressure doesn't bother them. Like Jesse Jones. I forgot about Jesse. Jesse Jones is a monster, and a lot of people don't have any idea who he is because he just plays. Him and Matt Bond, they play a lot of big cash in Texas, and they don't really know who they are, but if you know them, you know that they're very good.
Yeah. So what do you feel? Cash players or tournament players? I know you're biased a little bit, but or do you think it's just kind of different muscles and they're kind of both the same? You think one's better than the other?
It's just I feel that it is easier for a big, like if you're good at big cash, like deep cash games. It makes you that better. It makes you a better tournament player, like especially deep in tournaments, because the pressure is not going to bother you as much. And if you're used to playing a lot of deep cash, you're used to playing with 100, 125 bigs. You know how to maneuver through and keep the foot on the gas. A lot of people. I'm not saying I do a lot of punting, and when I get a bunch of chips, but I'm not afraid. I'm going to open up. I'm still going to open a very wide range, and I'm going to do a lot of c betting, and I'm going to make you make a decision for your stack a lot of times, and that's what it's about.
So cash games help you, is what you're saying in terms of tournaments. Do you prefer one or the other? You prefer tournaments?
I've been playing Hold'em Cash. I found out it was kind of. I play like smaller games like around home. Like if my buddy is running the game or whatever, I'll go give him some action. But I mostly, if I'm playing cash in the casino, I play Poly Omaha. I just feel like playing Hold'em Cash changes and affects my whole tournament game, I guess you could say. I think they're two different games completely. A lot of people would agree with me. Some people would disagree, but
yeah,
no, I agree with you.
I was going to say that kind of segues into another question I had. I saw you had some PLO wins or cashes in your Hendon Mob. Do you play any other mixed games besides PLO?
I like to. Big O and like high low PLO is probably like two of my better games. There's just not a whole lot of places that offer those kind of tournaments. So when I do, like if there's a big game playing in a casino, I'll jump in. Like Cherokee's probably one of the few places that offer a Big O game, but they don't offer like a bigger limit. Big O, they play 5-5, which can get good. I mean, all the cash games in Cherokee are great. Probably some of the best cash in the country. I'm trying to learn. I used to know all the games very well. Back whenever Poker Stars was around, I used to play like Raz and Deuces 7 and I mean, I know how to play the games. I'm just very rusty.
Yeah, well, that kind of segues into my another question I had was, did you play online? Obviously, you did pre Black Friday, or do you play online now? That sort of stuff.
I don't play much online anymore. I played a little, and actually, back whenever they were around, I didn't play much online at all. I played a little bit on Poker Stars and a little bit on Full Tilt, but nothing really like the volume of like people back then, like uh, the Hilton brothers, Jonathan Hilton, David Hilton. Uh, they used to be. That's all they did. Is they play a lot of online, and they're from Chattanooga. They're great. They're really good. They're very good at poker. Jonathan won, the national championship. I want to say in 2015 or 2016 for the WSOP, and they don't do so much traveling anymore. Like they just mostly sit around and they grind online. But some of the best players in the world, they play online. They see so many more hands than you do if you're playing live. It's impossible to see that many hands live that you could have. Somebody could play a year online and probably see more than somebody else see in 30 years playing live.
Yeah,
So
you're right.
you mentioned a few guys from your area, Blake, Dale, Jonathan. Is there an active underground scene, or did there used to be? Did you guys all kind of grind against one another for some
The cash games
period of
used to
time?
be very. I used to run a cash game for a very long time. I ran a tournament with a buddy of mine, and it got pretty big. There used to be very good cash games here. There was a tournament I want to say on Wednesdays and Fridays at the VFW close to my house, and it would get 100. It'd get at least 100 players every Wednesday and Friday. It was like a $35 rebuy tournament, and that's where we basically all probably met each other. Was there, and then after the tournament, they'd have 3 or 4 2-5 cash games going. So it's the cash tournament. Poker used to be very good in Chattanooga, as far as that goes. And then Chattanooga police kind of decided they want to start making money. So they started cracking down on the poker games, basically. I mean, there's no other real reason for them to break it. I mean, nobody's doing any wrong. And then, they'd say they're in there looking for somebody with a warrant or some shit. They always had some excuse for coming in and breaking the games up. So most of the games aren't really in Chattanooga anymore. There's like a couple games in Northwest Georgia, which is real close to my house. And then there's one in Cleveland that's actually a pretty good game. But the underground scene has pretty much went away just because Chattanooga has made it impossible for anybody. I mean, everybody gets tired of having to pay these little silly fines and getting these misdemeanors on their record. And, back whenever this was happening a lot, they had this just busted paper. I don't know if y'all are familiar with that. It's like it's kind of like if you get arrested, they put your name on this little bitty newspaper and it's got everybody's pictures in it. A lot of people were losing their very good jobs because of this stupid little paper, and they were getting these misdemeanors from being at poker games. So it
Wow.
kind of killed a lot of the poker action around town.
Well, so that's why there's so many travelers from Chattanooga, I guess, because we get a lot of folks come in from there all the way to Pearl River and obviously Tunica and Cherokee, like you mentioned. That makes a lot of sense. So what is your favorite win or your favorite tournament? Is there an experience at some point through your poker career where it stands out above the others? Is it your first win or your biggest win?
Probably the one in Biloxi probably means the most to me. I grew up, like I said, I grew up there. My mom and my dad are both buried in Gulfport. My dad died when I was 18. So, I mean, the feelings aren't as strong as, my mother just passed away 2 years ago, the week of Mother's Day. So, of course, I still miss her a bunch. I love my dad, but, I was mama's boy, I guess you could say. So, the day, I go back to tournament I want to say back on Friday, and then Saturday, we kind of took the day off, went and had some good seafood, did some shopping, went to put some flowers on her grave, and he got a flower. He didn't get a whole. He got one of her flowers. You know, they're buried next to each other, so I guess he probably would understand too. But
Did you feel like she was with you when you were playing?
yeah, I was just all day. I was very calm. I mean, I never felt like any point in the tournament like I never like. Sometimes you get in this place it feels like you're stuck in quicksand. You start panicking. You lose a hand, and you lose another hand, and you lose another hand, and it's like, oh man, what's happening? Like we were just on top of the world. Now it's like falling apart. We got to do something, and it usually just. I just never felt that, just kind of just calm all the way through.
Yeah, Joe Hebert, him dedicating his win to his mom, and I know of one or two other players where they were kind of playing and thinking about somebody they lost, and that they shared the same experience as you, was kind of just feeling very at ease and nothing was going to overwhelm them or whatever, and they saw the end of it. So I'm really happy for you that you got to do that. That's pretty cool because she probably was with you, in that moment, so you got to share that with her. That's pretty cool. Is Ben still with us, Gene? I don't know if Ben, are you there? You got any questions?
Oh yeah, I'm here. Really enjoying the conversation. It's quieted down here, the cafe. So I wanted to ask, Matt, you've been talking about some of the toughest players that you played against, whether it's Dan Lowry or Dale. But I'm just wondering what your support system looks like, who you lean on, who you learn from. And I'm looking at that winner's photo at Horseshoe Tunica with some first class players like Preston McHugh and JP Virtuoso. So yeah, I'm wondering if you just talk a little bit about your poker support system.
I have an amazing support system, especially at home. My girlfriend's amazing. She supports. There's a lot of women get put up with what we do. I'm gone. I'm probably home 2 weeks out of every month if I'm home that much. Most of the year, of course, then some of the year I'm home for a month or so at a time when there's not really like any good series is going on. So she's solid as a rock. She's very good to me. I appreciate everything she does. My kids think it's really cool. They tell her, they want to learn to play poker, but my youngest son, I wouldn't teach him how to play. And, I bought him an Oculus for Christmas, and he just went ahead and downloaded WPT on it and taught himself. So we got to work on his sizings, when he has the nuts and when he's bluffing. But other than his sizing, he's 12 and he already understands it pretty well. He taught himself, I don't think their moms would appreciate me getting them into this lifestyle. They're both very, very smart. They do great in school. So hoping they go a different route. If when they're old enough to, want to play or can play in the casino or whatever, we'll discuss it further. I'm not trying to give them any real good advice just yet to make them really good at poker to where they're going to make their mamas mad about not going to college. I have a bunch of great friends. Like I said, I talked to Blake. Blake's a really good friend of mine. Me and Dale have been friends for years. Cody Stanford, another really good friend of mine. The sports system is amazing. When you're downswinging, it's tough, and it's nice to be able to, people have been there, like, especially if they've been playing a long time, they understand that downswings happen, and they're kind of, man, you just got to push through, just stay positive.
So that's funny you mentioned that about your boys, because with my kids, my daughter seemed to be the only one interested in poker. And then I figured out I think she just liked staying up late with me watching WPT or whatever we were watching for a while. But me and her bonded a little bit with that. But she might just want to stay up late. But my boys, I'm trying to keep away as well. Like, I think my rule is they can't play till they're like 27, which probably is the wrong idea. That's probably going to motivate them to play as soon as possible. But I just seen so many young guys have like early success in poker, and it's almost like the worst thing for you. You're better off like struggling to start, and then it's easier to deal with the successes later versus,
Right.
Like you mentioned with the downswings. So I'm in the same boat as you. It's let's get them focused on other stuff first. But we'll see.
Right. We'll see. But I'm not steering them that way. Like I said, they're both very smart. They both do very well in school. So it's just they want, they play football, wrestle, baseball, all this,
Yeah.
So we just hopefully just stick through that, and we'll figure it out later if that's what they decide they really want to do.
Right. Because it's always dangerous when they're competitive, because then they get to a point where they're looking for a new outlet for that. I think that's true of almost all of the people that we know that played poker. At some point, we're all competitive with something else before, right? And this is a good outlet for it. So, what about you, Gene? When is Ivy going to be allowed to play poker? Or is he
Well,
already playing?
no. Well, if he's playing, I don't know that he is. And obviously knows we have this company and that we have to go work the poker tournaments and this and that. But he's actually never asked me about it. Like, the only thing him and I had a conversation where explained to him that it's a math game. Okay, Daddy's not gambling. I'm not sitting at a blackjack table trying to beat the house or anything like that. Mathematicians have proven it's a game of skill. The best player is going to win in the long run, and it's just like chess. It's just like pool, just like backgammon. There's skill component that if you make the right decisions and are perceptive enough, that's how you can win in poker. And he seemed to understand that. And then that's the same conversation I have to have with all my bosses. I just got a new boss, so now I got to figure out whether this guy is how he's going to react, because my old boss, they did a realignment. So my old boss was cool. He'd call me riverboat gambler and all this other kind of stuff. And then now I got this new boss, and it's never come up yet. But everybody, that all my peers at Spectrum all know I play poker. You can Google my name, and but it's never come up. But that's going to be the same conversation I'm going to have with him.
Yeah, I find one of the hardest things is explaining it to people that have maybe played a little bit and probably didn't play it very well. And so in their opinion, it's not a skill game because they got beat up or whatever, or they were into it for a little bit. They got their brains kicked in and like, oh, well, it's just gambling because
Right.
they can't have lost because they were bad, right? Those people are harder to explain than the people that are completely naive, I think.
It was that's a funny story. We were just talking about anytime you get a cab in Vegas, the cab the Uber drivers are like, what are you coming over here for? What are you doing? Like, yo, we play poker, and they just like, oh, I'm pretty good at blackjack, and it's like it's not really the same thing. It is just like literally every single time it's like a blackjack story or there's a couple of people that actually played poker, but more times than none, it's like they have a blackjack story for you.
Right.
That's funny.
In fact, my Ubers and cab rides in Vegas, now I reconsider even talking about poker at all, because I get those stories, the blackjack stories, or you'll get the one guy telling you, all of a sudden you're listening to bad beats because the guy had played limit poker for a little bit at some period. And you're like, you know what? The reason I'm in your Uber is because I took a nasty one walking out of the Venetian. So I don't really need to hear you telling me about your.
It's the word. I mean, you just take a real bad beat. You just want a quiet ride, and man, they just. I wish there was more. A few times I've got a little button where it says, "Do you want a quiet ride? Do you want a conversation?" And I wish it would be on every single one of them. But like quiet ride.
Right. Yep.
Especially in the morning, probably not so much is fine. But if we're leaving a casino at nighttime, at 90% of the time, we're going to want a quiet ride back.
Yep, 100%.
I started actually just walking back a lot of times if it wasn't incredibly too far. It's just like a 15-minute walk. I've started walking back just so I can have get the fresh air and walk back and not have to carry on the conversation with anybody if I don't want to.
Yeah. Hey, Gene, you or Ben got any more questions for Matt?
No, I'm good.
Yeah, just one more, which I suppose would be looking to the future. You obviously have you've cultivated a recipe for success over the years. You've been doing this for a long time, and I'm just wondering if your goal is to do more of the same, or if you have new goals moving forward, different kind of tournaments you want to play bigger, play other regions, or not.
I think a lot of the mistakes that people make is when they have some success, they just start jumping up in the size of their buy-ins and playing buy-ins that are not really feasible for them. You know, you may have won some money, and you, like I said, downswings happen, and I think a lot of problem people have is like they go play 10Ks, they play a lot more 5Ks than they're playing, or they 25Ks, and you know, it's not some. I would say the players are more. I would say I guess you call them better players. I guess I've played with some of these guys that, you know, that's all they play is 10Ks and 25Ks, and some of these main event, and then the main event, and like these 3500s in Fort Lauderdale. I play with a lot of them. The main difference between a lot of them is they play math. Like most of these guys they just absolutely stick to the math, no matter what. This is what GTO says. This is what I have 17 big blinds. I open from the hijack. I had queen jack suited in the small blind. This is a slam dunk. You know, send it. You know, when a lot of my game is more feel. You know, if this guy hasn't played a hand in 4 hours and he opens, I don't care where he opens from. He can open from the button, and you know, I'm not going to see. A lot of times, I'm just going to play what I feel. I don't really. I do stick. I look at pre-flop charts a lot, just because I really know what everybody else is doing. I do some studying, but like I said, the most of the studying I do is because I want to know what the Wizards are doing. You know, what their mindset is, and I do include it a lot in my game, but not so much in the 400s and stuff like that. You know. Mike from Alabama is not thinking about 4-betting me light with, you know, ace 4 offsuit because he's blocking an ace, so I probably don't have aces. You know, just stuff like that. But for the most part, I plan on sticking to, you know, what the circuit series, 400s, 1700 mains. I like to go down to Fort Lauderdale and play the $3,500 main they have down there. You know, this one in April, it's always the biggest one they have. It's almost always over $1 million for first for it. I made it pretty deep in that tournament once, and I took a really, really ugly one on day 4, coming 5th in chips, and I'm out in an hour and a half. Took a really, really dumb one, but it's part of it. Like I said, I think a lot of the mistakes people make is bankroll management. Bankroll management is so huge, and I have my life leaks. You know, it used to be blackjack. I don't play blackjack so much anymore. I wish it was blackjack still. Slot machines are a lot more expensive than blackjack. Pushing the button happens. The money goes a lot faster. So I'm trying to, now that I got some money in my pocket, I'm trying not to do as much gambling. Hopefully I can keep myself out of the pits.
Strategy wise, is there ever been a piece of information or maybe a mentor that gave you some advice, or just one little thing where it seemed to click and you seemed to level up? Because I mean, we have a lot of people who play on the coast, listen to the podcast, who maybe have had some 10K, 10K to 30K scores, but nothing like 6 figures or anything like that. Is there a piece of information, a little nugget that you really got a lot out of, or is experience kind of overwhelmed that?
Most of it is experience. This is, I don't, I tell people all the time, I don't do free coaching, but I don't do coaching at all. So, I mean, we've talked about, me, Blake, and Preston, and a couple other people talked about maybe David Moses. We all talked about maybe putting something together and starting some coaching, but I wouldn't even know where to begin. I've had so many people asking me for coaching. I just wouldn't even know where to start. But from my experience, I do better in tournaments if I don't let my opponent dictate when I'm going to flip for my stack. I hate calling off. I just hate it. I'd much rather be the aggressor sticking the money in than making them call it off.
Yeah.
And I've always seemed to do better when I'm the one being the aggressor as opposed to calling off. So if I can give any advice, flip on your own terms.
Yeah. It's good advice for
It
sure.
is.
I always feel like I'm having better results when I am being the aggressor. And I think you're exactly right. Like you feel better about it, even if you don't win the flip than you do when you're like calling off and you're not really sure. Yeah, you're flipping, but they always seem to hit in those spots or where they hold if you need to hit. So, well, I think that's everything from me. We enjoyed talking to you. We're certainly have always valued the fact that you're willing to wear our gear and stuff. We saw you in that winner's photo wearing the GCP sweatshirt, and we thank you for that. That was pretty cool of you.
Be looking for my endorsement check in the mail just whenever I need my address.
Yes. Please send the address as soon as possible.
Appreciate you, Bill.
Yep. Thank you, Matt.